Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Hey, it's another year, another time to make some more money, and I've got the course for you. Start the conversation, get the meeting will help your team, both business development, sales development, get into those new cold accounts, whether that function is under marketing or sales. I'll help you with that by starting organic, natural conversations, not pitching. Have people open up with you, build up a connection with them, understand your total addressable market, prioritize it, and put in a system that scales, that's predictable, that works the way you want it to work instead of the old school pitch. Believe me, I've sat through so many of these cold calling seminars, courses, books, and I've been doing it for 30 years, and it's evolved. And what I'm doing today is what's working in today's world. It works naturally, and people are just loving it, getting meetings, closing deals, and doing it without the rejection that is typically there in sales. So check it out at b2brevenue.com under the training tab. You can schedule a call with me. We can talk it over. I'll explain how it works and how we can work together on it. You can buy it per student, or I'll customize it for your particular product and team and coach you through that process. Also, if you're a sales leader and you want predictability, you want direction, momentum, and control with your deals, you can sign up for that course as well. Same type of model. A year-long access to it. It's content, community, and coaching, all included at b2brevenue.com. You can get my free ebook there on how companies make product selections. That's all free. Let's get into the interview, but I want to make sure you're checking out my partners. They're in the show notes. This week, it's Pipedrive and CoVideo. Pipedrive is the new CRM. It's been out for 5 years. I've been using it forever. I love that. It's connected up with your email, your calendar, and now they have team capabilities. CoVideo is the video email system. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's the way to break into new accounts. It's so much more engaging than text. Check them out. Also, make sure you're checking me out on LinkedIn, Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Phil, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Brian. I'm really excited to be here on the show. So a little bit about myself. I'm married. I have 4 kids. From a personal front, I actually grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, where you're located, which is always exciting. We went to BCC High School right there in Bethesda. And right now, I currently am running the Chief Sales Officer Strategies practice and the Channel Sales Leadership practice at SiriusDecisions. So I work with sales leaders to help them with their biggest challenges as it relates to sales, things like organizational design, talent management, things like demand engine, how to make sure you have consistency in sales execution, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'm doing that after I spent 25 years in sales and sales leadership, actually carrying a bag. I started as an enterprise sales rep, working for Pegasystems, and went over to Akamai and rose up through the ranks there to be a VP of sales, and was a VP of sales at HubSpot, and I've done the VP of sales role at several startups. So went from being a practitioner for 25 years, and now I'm advising sales leaders, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
And what was your motivation to go that route, as opposed to stay in an operations role or go to CEO or start your own thing?
I thought it would be intellectually very interesting, and I thought the idea of helping my peers would be very interesting as well. I mean, certainly I was in the sales role, and I made plenty of mistakes as a VP of sales. Actually, I made plenty of mistakes my whole career, but certainly as a VP of sales, I made mistakes. And I thought, that we could build a practice that would be aimed at helping the sales leader. I didn't think there were a lot of resources out there that sales leaders could turn to get advice and to get access to data that would tell them how are other companies doing it and what are the ways that they should be trying to solve those problems. So I felt real passionate about it. I thought, there's a need for this. Sales leaders really could use a resource place that they can go to get information, get data about what their peers are doing, get access to advice from people who've done it before to help them. And we know sales leadership is a very lonely job. That's hard. You can't go to your CEO and say, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? My CEO is not going to put up with that. And then intellectually, I thought it'd be very interesting, and it has been. I get to jump on the phone every day with multiple chief sales officers who are running all kinds of different organizations. Some are running organizations with 10 reps. Some have hundreds of reps. Some have thousands of reps. Some are running 100% go-to-market models through the channel. Some are running 100% direct. Some are doing high velocity. Some are doing long, complex sales cycles. So in the midst of teaching and helping, I'm actually learning, which I think is very interesting too. So it's been a lot of fun.
Because sales has changed so much, probably in the last 15 years, certainly since you and I were reps, where it was pretty straightforward compared to it is. I mean, when I started, it was, a CRM didn't exist. We had them, no one used them. And, even when I was at a huge company, they ended up putting everything in a spreadsheet. But today, it's like, every movement is counted,
Exactly.
What's the key, or is there a key thing that you hear most often?
Well, I think what's really interesting, the difference, I'll key in on that point, Brian, that you raised about how things are different from when you and I started in sales, when I started carrying back 25 years ago. The biggest difference is that the buyer has all the power. I mean, back when I started as a rep, if they needed anything, they had to call me. If they needed a white paper, they needed information about our product, they had to call me. I was the sales rep. I had all the information. Now, what everybody does is just go click on Google and start searching. So they're doing a lot more research on their own and doing self-directed research. That doesn't mean the sales rep's not important. Clearly, the sales rep is still critical to the ultimately getting a deal. But what it means is that I think it's really pushing sales in general to up their game, because you have to now, you can't just provide information about pricing and product specs. You know what? Your buyer can go get that online and get it from your website. You have to actually offer something more. You have to be able to take what you're offering and provide insights into their industry, into their business, to teach them something. You also have to be able to take what you're providing and put it in their context, not general statements, but how it's actually going to help them. And I think that's been one of the major changes that I've seen from selling when I started 25 years ago to selling now, is just buyers have so much more access to information, and it's really putting pressure on sales to respond, to be able to provide buyers with help during their advice, and to facilitate that buyer's journey instead of trying to control it and trying that hard close and that hard sell. You want buyers at the end of that buying experience to say, boy, that was incredible. That sales rep was incredibly helpful at every stage that I was during my buyer's journey. They sent me content that was relevant for where I was. They taught me, they gave me insights, they helped me buy. That's what you want a buyer to say now. And that wasn't something you needed a buyer to say 25 years ago, even though I do think fundamentally there's still similarities. Great sales reps when I was growing up, they did two things really well. They had high levels of activities, meaning they spent a lot of time in front of buyers, which is critical. Sounds obvious, but that's step one. And two is they were really good at qualifying, at really asking good questions and narrowing down and making sure they were investing their time in opportunities that actually could close, where they had a solution that could actually help the buyer. Those two haven't changed. The best sales reps are ones that are going to spend an enormous amount of time in front of customers, not doing internal stuff, and they're going to spend a lot of time qualifying carefully by asking good questions to understand, is this an opportunity where I can actually help the buyer or not? And if they're not, they disengage early and they work on opportunities that they can actually close. And I think that's the same thing it's been for probably all of sales forever.
And what I like about your background is that you've been at very different companies that had to have very different sales organizations.
Yes, that's correct.
Like, I know Pegasystems, that very high end.
Yep.
Right. Big ticket items, very complex sale. And then you go to like HubSpot, mid-market, very transactional sale over the phone. What, pretty much no field force or?
Very, very much. Yeah, it was inside sales. We did some hybrid where we went out about 25% of the time, but for the most part, it's inside sales. But Brian, I think it's so exciting right now with sales. And I think for sales leaders who recognize what's happening in the market and who are able to recognize how buyers have changed, like I've described, there is so much opportunity to redesign how your sellers sell to match how buyers actually buy. And those organizations and sales leaders who can capitalize on that, who see this trend and can rethink and reimagine their sales process to provide help during that buying journey are going to win. Because in the end of the day, solutions increasingly are easy to copy. Software is very easy to copy. What's not easy to copy is the experience a buyer has when they're dealing with your organization, and that it matches the promise that your brand has given them, that this will be a great experience for that buyer. And that's really hard to do. So I've done enterprise complex sales motion. One trend we're seeing a lot is more and more companies are moving to inside sales.
Yeah.
HubSpot obviously was an inside sales motion, very high velocity relative to Pegasystems, or relative even to Akamai Technologies, where we were
Right.
doing 6-month deals and hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. And HubSpot's high velocity. And I would tell you that so basically the companies with field sales organizations are underestimating the investment that they should be making in inside sales in high velocity. And so basically a lot of people with field sales organizations think about inside sales and aiming that at very sort of low end type of opportunities, which is true, but they're underestimating you can use inside sales for bigger and bigger deals in more and more target segments than you have been. And I think that's really exciting too, is the opportunity to leverage new kinds of roles and new kinds of structures to enable you to close business in the way that buyers actually want to be sold to, which is more self-directed and using lighter touch sales motions, and be able to lower your cost of sale and still be able to close more business more cost efficiently. And I think that's sort of what digital transformation is all about: selling the way buyers want to buy, and then making sure you're doing it in a way that allows you to more cost efficiently reach those buyers. So ultimately you have a sales organization that's achieving its goals, but more cost efficiently than in the past.
And when you're dealing with clients, what do you most often see being done wrong? Is it a mismatched strategy process to market? Is it too much pressure for growth at any cost?
That's a great question. It really, I think, this is going to sound fundamental, and you might say, well, that's so obvious. But one of the things I see pretty consistently is that sales leaders don't do a very good job of making sure they have complete alignment with product and marketing on what the prioritized target markets are. And that is, where are our best opportunities to grow? Because what ends up happening, and we hear this all the time, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, and certainly I felt this when I was a rep and coming up through the ranks, was that marketing doesn't give me any leads, and the leads they give me stink, right? How many times we've heard that? And then marketing obviously is complaining about sales, and they don't follow up on the leads. But to me, that's symptomatic of the fact that there is not the agreement on what the target market is. The best, most highly efficient engines and revenue engines are ones that product marketing and sales have sat down together and said, here are our best opportunities to grow. Here are the target segment. Here are the target accounts within the segment. Here are the buying centers we're trying to reach. And here are the personas within each buying center that we want to talk to. And then here's the journey that they go through. We've mapped out that journey to say, this is how buyers want to buy today, not 15 years ago, because it's changed. You got the internet now. So to me, foundationally, if you don't have that agreement up front as a sales leader with product and marketing, you're not going to get the support you need. Product's going to be building a product for some segment that's totally not the one you're going after. Marketing is going to generate leads for the wrong persona because you guys don't agree. And then sales is going to be the one going after the most likely opportunities to close business because they're closest to the market. So they have that feel for what the best segment is. If you want support from product and marketing, you need to get in a room and agree, where are we trying to go? Where are our best growth opportunities? Let's make sure all the resources in product and marketing and sales are aligned to pursue the same prioritized target market. So I think that's one huge opportunity that we consistently see within organizations. The second is org design. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but many organizations are really not taking the opportunity to rethink how they've structured their org design. If you think about org design, a lot of times it's really based on principles from a long time ago, that command and control hierarchical structure that was put in place 20, 30 years ago. And now you have this buyer that's more demanding, wants a seamless and consistent experience. They want a frictionless experience. And you have org structures that don't enable that. So a lot of organizations I've mentioned before are still using field sales teams when they could augment those field sales teams with larger inside sales teams. They could use e-commerce, for example, to offload some of those lower end deals to e-commerce and self-service. And so organizational structures have to evolve. You have to use things like specialization and collaboration and efficiency and these kinds of principles to enable your sales organization to more effectively pursue that new buyer in a way that is consistent with how buyer wants to buy. So if there are two areas that we see, and actually one more that I see, so that's two, strategy and org design. The third one that comes up a lot is productivity. Which is, how do you make your sellers more productive? And I'm sure that's near and dear to your heart, certainly is to mine. But we do these studies with our clients to basically assess where our reps spend their time. And you would be amazed, or maybe you wouldn't, how little time reps are actually spending selling. They're only spending about 27.1% of their time in front of customers actually selling. The rest of their time is being spent on things that are, relatively speaking, not nearly as productive. And so as a sales leader, your job is to remove those obstacles and to make it a lot easier for salespeople to get things done internally, to free them up. Because you know what? Your buyer wants wants to have a frictionless experience. They want you to respond quickly. If they ask for something, they expect you to turn things around. And if you've made it hard on your sellers because you put so many processes internally that are cross-functional in nature, and you're not able to get back to them on things like proposals and quotes and deal desk and things like that, it takes too long. Guess what? Your buyer's feeling that, and they're waiting there, and they're saying, this organization can't get their act together. They can't even respond quickly with a quote when I want one. What are they going to be like to do business with? And so those are the three areas that we see the biggest challenges consistently with organizations: sales strategy, org design and investment, and then sales productivity.
And that's a hot topic with me. Kind of, you call it culture, but you call it just leadership, where the sales leaders don't look at everybody as a resource, that they're human beings and they don't want to be data entry monkeys. And I think that the downside of the digital transformation is you have to manage the digitals, right? You have to enter data, you have to hit a bunch of keys, and there's a training course for each one of them, and the enablement of people gets in the way of the execution.
Great point. I think you're right. And I think, but what I think is exciting is, AI. We did a bunch of presentations at Summit, which is our big customer event. We had 3,500 people in Austin in May, and we talked a lot about AI. We had several presentations on artificial intelligence. And I agree with you. Certainly, you don't want data monkeys that are just entering data, taking time away from selling. But the data is critically important to understanding that buyer and knowing where they are, particularly when you're handing off to different functions within the organization. And so what I think is exciting is many more artificial intelligence tools are coming to market that will free the rep up from having to do entry and do it automatically. And I think that's exciting potential. And I also think it differs by the sales motion. Obviously, if you're doing highly complex, large deals for 12-month plus sales cycles, the amount of data entry that you're probably expecting as a sales leader might be different than if you're in a high velocity sales motion that's a 30-day sale with a price point of $1,000. Obviously the people you hire is different, the motion is different, and the requirements for data entry and process. When you have a high velocity sales motion, you typically require a lot more process, a lot more structure, a lot more data, and then the reps want to adhere to that versus a complex sales motion where it's less strenuous on the data and process. It's still important, but not as important as a high velocity sales motion.
And you're seeing a lot of sales leaders not have an ops person to kind of make sure the trains run on time. The forecast is clean, the expense reports are paid, the reviews are done, all the things that take up a sales leader's time that aren't revenue generating. I do. I think they underinvest. We don't see a lot of organizations that don't have sales ops at all, but we do see organizations that we think have underinvested in sales ops. To me, what's happening is the sales leader's job is becoming more like a chief operating officer, if you think about it. And it's not enough just to hit your number anymore. When I started in sales and when I came up through the ranks and on my first time being a VP of sales, if I hit my number in the boardroom, they left me alone. It's like, hey, I made a number. Great. Go in, celebrate a little bit, walk out. I'm on to my next quarter. Now it's not good enough. It's not good enough. We did a study with board members last year and published it, and it was interviewing board members to understand, what do you want from your VP of sales? What gets them into trouble? What are the things that put them in good light? And we heard consistently a couple of things. One was the boards want the sales leader not only to hit the number, they have to demonstrate that how they've done it, that this is repeatable, it's predictable, and it's scalable. So if you hit your number now as a sales leader and you walk into the boardroom and you have no idea how you hit your number, you can't explain it, you can't point to data, you can't point to critical processes that you've installed that have enabled that's not good enough, that you're going to be out the door. And so to me, that's where sales ops plays a critical role. You have to be able to walk in and say, this is my model for success, that this is the reasons behind why we're having success. Here are the critical processes that we're installing or plan to install that will continue to allow us to have the kind of results that we currently had if you made your number. And this is why I have confidence we'll continue to scale. That's what you have to do now. It's not good enough just to make your number, walk in and say, stay out of my business, I made my number, and I'll be back in a quarter to tell you how I made the next number. They're just not doing that anymore. So, and they're also raising the bar on efficiency. It's not good enough just to say every quarter, okay, or every year when you're doing annual planning, I want more heads. I'm going to put more head count in to grow. A lot of sales leaders are under more pressure to say, how do I actually use the budget dollars more efficiently? And that comes back to inside sales. And part of that digital transformation is thinking, okay, are there ways of offloading
certain segments onto a lower cost resource like inside sales? Can you offload smaller deals to e-commerce to free up your resources to spend more time on the biggest deals or the most complex opportunities to drive more growth there? So I think it's really exciting time for back to being a modern sales leader and the importance of sales operations to help you be able to build that story.
Yeah, because I'm sure, every January they get the request from the board. It's like, okay, what's going to take to double the number?
Yep.
And I don't think the double the reps is the right answer anymore.
No, it's not. And frankly, there's still so many reps that don't make their number, which you and I know, right? We work with organizations where 30% of the reps are making their number. Now, that can be a combination of factors. It could be quota. We see some organizations that are over assigning quota up to 30 to 35% all the way to the top. And it's like, well, only 20% of my reps are making the number. Yeah, but you're over assigning quota by 35%. So that's, we recommend 10% or less total quota over assignment to the top. But again, yeah, you've got a lot of reps. How do you make them more productive? How do you take the assets you already have and help them be more productive through making sure they're focused on the better opportunities, surfacing those opportunities through technology? You can do that. And then making sure they're getting good coaching from managers. One of the things that we do in addition to figuring out where reps are spending their time, we do studies of sales managers for our clients too, and where they're spending their time, and try to understand why aren't sales managers spending more time coaching and developing their most important asset, which is their people. And let's figure out what's blocking them from spending that time, and let's free that time up by improving processes so they can spend more time with their reps, coaching and developing the reps. And if they have the time and they're not doing it, there must be a skill set problem. So if it's a skill set problem, how do we give them more training and coaching the managers to enable them to be better coaches to their reps? And that's what reps want. All the studies we do, they want managers that they're going to learn from, that are going to coach them, they're going to develop them, they're going to invest in them, they're going to help them be productive and be successful. And again, I don't think that's any different probably than 20, 25 years ago when we started, but it's just, I think the tools are more powerful now, and there's more tools out there to help managers be more successful with their reps.
And that's it, because, the leader is, judged on the number, and as you stated, how they get the number and how repeatable it is, and moving away from the MacGyver model.
Right, exactly. The good old days.
I got Tom Cruise model.
Leave me alone. I did it. I'm here. I did my number. I'm out. I'll see you next quarter.
But the reps are kind of pushed in the other direction, where they're KPI to death on activity that is almost orthogonal to accomplishment.
I do, but I think what data is important. It's almost like testing with kids. A lot of people think kids are being over tested today. I do think it's important to have some amount of data, and not to punish reps, but to be able to help them understand from a coaching and development standpoint, to help them. And for example, going and telling a rep they're not making their number, hey, you're not making your number, like it was when you and I started, like you're not making your number. No.
Fix it.
Well, thanks a lot. That's really helpful.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
And I didn't know that. Thank you. I feel great about it. I mean, that doesn't help a rep. What helps a rep is saying, look, let's break down where your problems are. And first of all, hopefully the managers go out on a lot of calls and listen to the rep and watch them in front of customers and coaching in that way. But data can offer another data point to say, let's look at your mini funnel and say, where is your mini funnel and conversion rates of your mini funnel relative and pipeline relative to the company? And maybe it's a demo to close problem. Your demo to close rate is 15%. The company average is 30. So I'm going to invest a lot of time watching you on demos, investing in your demos to see how you're doing, to coach and develop you to improve your conversion rates. Or maybe you and I know, Brian, if somebody's making their number, if a person's consistently making their number, are you going to be all over them all the time about how much activity they have? Probably not. It's like, look, they're doing great. But I do think data can help analyze and bring some quantitative evidence to help managers support their reps and do a better job of coaching and developing, because the old adage of just saying you're not making your numbers doesn't help. And it's more, let me just break down your funnel, compare it to the overall average, and understand where your problems are. And let's focus on that area and try to improve it to help you improve your numbers.
Yeah, and from the rep standpoint, I think it comes back to the two things that you started with, that they were active in front of clients, and then second, active with the right clients.
Exactly.
And I think AI can certainly help us there, because everything looks the same in the CRM.
Yep. It does. You're right. I think AI can really help surface the best opportunities to work on, right? The most likely candidates that might need that cross-sell because of other companies that look just like them, or the most likely candidates to be a new logo candidate because other companies look just like them. And look, Brian, you and I were doing that 25 years ago. We were just doing it with not nearly as much information. AI can bring a lot more information and do it automatically, I guess, to be able to do that for the rep and say, look, these are probably your best opportunities to focus on. But then the rep still has to have good qualification skills. You and I both know so many reps ask questions for answers they want to hear. They're afraid to ask tough questions. They're afraid the answer is not going to be what they want, so they avoid them. And then it comes back to burn them in the end. It's better to ask the difficult questions up front and early and really assess whether you can help that company and really they have a need, they want to solve that problem or not. And if they don't, move on to something else. And if they do, great, work on it. But so many reps invest so much time on opportunities that will never close. And that just takes their time, which is their most precious asset, away from other opportunities they could be working on. And that's not a recipe for success.
Now, you hear a lot of reports that, sales jobs are going away, but I hear just the opposite. And, I remember I've been hearing it my whole career that, we're not going to need these high-priced B2B salespeople. Yet every sales leader, every CEO I know, they all ask the same question. Hey, you know any great salespeople?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think it's going to change. I mean, I do think sales. I mean, obviously, I grew up in the world of sales, and I believe fundamentally sales will continue to be very important. And we at Serious Decisions believe that too, in terms of the data. What's different is now that some, more of the interactions early in the education phase of a buyer's journey are non-human. So, like I said up front, buyers can interact with websites, they can download assets, they can talk to buyers before they ever interact with a rep. That doesn't mean the rep's not important. It just means it's changing, and that should hopefully free up reps to spend more time on mid to late stage opportunities. But I do think that the sales rep role will continue to be important. Now, there are opportunities, like I said up front, for sales leaders to redesign their go-to-market model to offload the smaller deals. If a buyer says, you know what, I don't want to talk to a rep. This is a small deal. It's $1,000. I don't need to talk to someone. It's pretty self-explanatory, and I just want to go on the website and click and buy it and make it easy. Then give that to them. Don't make them go through a rep. There are buyers that will say that. But I think what's going to happen over time is that will allow reps to focus more and more on the more complex opportunities, the bigger opportunities, the ones where buyers say, look, I need help. I need assistance. This is a high touch sales motion, and I really need hand-holding to make the purchase, and offload those ones where a buyer says, look, I don't need any help. This is a self-service model. I can do self-directed and buy it myself. Then give that to them. And so I think the sales role will always be important. It's going to change, I think, as buyers do more self-directed learning and investigation.
How about in the case, I mean, you might not see this at your day job, but it's certainly in your angel investing when you come out with something that's new, that people don't even know they have the problem it solves, that it has to be 100% outbound, that there's nobody in market for it. Do you either have clients with that, or how do you coach those early stage companies on how to build out a sales organization to be able to get into those opportunities?
Well, I think the way that Angel, the smaller companies really need to do is it's a little bit of what I said up front. They have to be very focused up front on what they believe their target market is, because you have so few resources. So you can't afford to diffuse your resources across lots of different segments. Hopefully, during the product development phase, and this is hopefully, because certainly I've been a part of startups that didn't do this, and then they expect sales to go figure out where to go sell it, which is not usually a good recipe for success. But hopefully that during that development of that startup, the people who are developing the product have gotten a lot of feedback from the market to understand what are clearly the needs, what are the type of companies that need this. And so by the time they start to hire a sales team and bring on a sales leader, they've already closed some initial deals, hopefully, and gotten some validation that the market they're pursuing is the right market, and bringing in sales leader to help sort of expand on those initial customers is a great way to go. If you have a product organization, a startup that's developed a product, really doesn't understand the market that it developed it for, really doesn't understand the needs of the buyer in terms of why they developed it, as a sales leader investigating that opportunity, I would stay away. Because in the end of the day, if you don't have a product that can meet a need, or they don't have any idea where that need is, it's going to be very hard for a sales leader to know where to go and ultimately be successful.
And are you seeing this SDR or the division of labor gone mad as a good thing or a bad thing, or case by case?
I think it's a good thing. I mean, I think I think the SDR, I think it's important to look at your funnel and say, what is the value of each stage of the funnel, and make sure that the amount of time that's being spent or the resource that's being put against that stage is appropriate for the value that that buyer sees in that stage. So, for example, early in the sales funnel, obviously, if you're going to be talking to lots of companies that maybe don't have a need for your product, investing a lot of an relatively expensive sales rep's time is probably not good time spent, right? And we do see that about 30% of a sales rep's time is spent very early stage of the funnel. This is from all the data we collect from all the studies we do with reps. And so there are many opportunities to offload that to an SDR, for example, to either qualify inbound demand or to do outbound prospecting demand. And because that's a relatively low value return in terms of the activity time spent, that probably is going to be better off having someone who's less experienced and less highly paid to do that. But I do think even if you go to specialization, because we are seeing trends where more and more companies are using specialization, I think you have to look increasingly for ways to incent collaboration. Because what buyers want is they want that seamless experience. So if you have hyper specialization and then you don't have a way of ensuring that they're all working together seamlessly, and that handoff from the SDR to the rep is not clear, or the handoff from the rep to the CSM, the customer success manager, is not clearly defined, you're going to have problems. And that specialization is going to come back to bite you, because a buyer doesn't care. They want to know that every person they talk to in an organization, where they are in their buyer's journey, that person has a good amount of insight and to help them contextually for where they are, and that when they become a customer, that it's all seamless and that information has been transferred. So we think specialization used appropriately is very effective, but we do think that you got to look for sales leaders, got to look for ways to make sure that there's good collaboration between those functional groups to ensure a seamless experience.
Cool. Hey, this has been a fun conversation, Phil. Where do people go to connect with you and learn more about your work?
Yes, you can go to my LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with people. Phil Harrell, Harrell, at LinkedIn. You can look me up with Serious Decisions. You can also go to SeriousDecisions.com. And if you're interested in the Chief Sales Officer Strategy Service, if you're a sales leader, you can click on the Chief Sales Officer Strategy Service. Or if you're a channel sales leader and you're interested in our channel sales leadership offering, you can click on that at the website too. I've really enjoyed it, Brian. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Hey, I want to make sure you're checking out b2brevenue.com. That is where you can get a free copy of an ebook that I did. It's a real ebook. It's not a fluff book. It shows and talks about how companies make buying decisions and how you can influence that from both a marketing and a sales standpoint, how to find all the people that are in the decision path and what they need to see, know, and touch and feel before they make a product selection. If your team needs some coaching, some help, some training, some systems, some processes that do work today, because we know what doesn't work, or you know what doesn't work, I'll show you what does work and how to connect and get into pretty much any account. It includes deal coaching and content community, and I can customize it for your particular company. Just go to b2brevenue.com, look under training, schedule a call with me. We can talk it over, or just sign up. You can pay per month or all at once, whichever makes most sense for your budget. Also, I put out videos pretty much daily on LinkedIn and on YouTube. On LinkedIn, it's Brian G. Burns, and on YouTube, it's Brian Burns Sales. Just search for that if you like to consume some video content. And if you see me on LinkedIn, please put a comment and a share and a like on some of the videos. I really appreciate it. I've got a company page for each podcast. This one, the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast, where I put both content and humor videos out daily. And tell a friend about the podcast. Really appreciate you listening. Check out the show notes for all the partners and the connections you can make there, the coupon codes for the products to evaluate them, see if they're a right match for you. And we'll see you next time.